Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to be reading from a book called Future Science: Life, Energies, and the Physics of Paranormal Phenomena, edited by John White and Stanley Krippner. This is I guess what you'd call an old book. Um, a friend introduced me to this book back when I was a sophomore at the University of Georgia in the 70s. Um, This book was originally published. Let's take a look here. By Anchor Books, Doubleday and Company Incorporated, Garden City, New York. This is the first edition, printed in 1977. I think it was probably around 78 or so when I read it. Well, actually, I read one article in particular, which I'm going to read excerpts to you today from that article. It's called the Incredible Hieronymus Machine, and caught my attention, and caught my attention to the pretty much the core of my being, and resulted in a fascination and a study, very fulfilling, lifelong study of the things that a lot of us say lie underneath, although others will say they're everywhere. It's just a matter of being able to perceive them. So some of the articles in here, Fields of Life by Edward Russell, Prana, the Traditional and the Modern View by Gopi Krishna, Bioplasma, From Physics to Metaphysics, Chapter 5, The New Technology, Harnessing the Energies of Life, and that's where the Incredible Hieronymus Machine is. So let me find that. This is a long article. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to read excerpts from it. The Incredible Hieronymus Machine by Joseph Goodovich. It originally appeared in Saga, September 1972, and was reprinted by permission of the author for this book. I know that this is coming across as backwards, but the book really does exist. All right, then. Not far from the Pennsylvania Dutch country, a converted military reconnaissance aircraft flew over the rolling hills of verdant farmland in the Cumberland Valley. A camera in the wing faithfully recorded the topography, including brown-gray areas where blighted crops were being attacked by hungry insects. The film was developed, shown to a local farmer, and the sections he wanted treated were outlined. A technician from the Homeotronic Research Foundation in Newport, Pennsylvania, clipped out the chosen sections, kept the negative, and placed the selected cuts in the small well of a black box. Every morning from 8:30 to 11 for a week, the technician instructed the farmer, turn this large dial on the top all the way to the right. Several days later, every corn borer, Japanese beetle, even the nematodes in the soil of the selected areas were thoroughly dead, exterminated in some strange way by something. But what? From the box. In Central Florida, Dr. William J. Hale, chief of Dow Chemical Company Research, photographed a blighted citrus orchard. He daubed a powerful reagent, a chemical deadly to the insects, on the images of several rows of infected trees. The slender, thread-like nematodes in this warm climate are among the world's most destructive and ineradicable parasites. They bore into the soil to a depth of 14 feet and are impervious to the most virulent pesticides. Dow's chief chemist placed the photograph into a device similar to the one used in Pennsylvania and gave the citrus grower these instructions. Turn it on for 2 hours every morning. The machine looked electronic, but there was no visible power source. A week later, every second row, the treated areas of the photograph, was free of all parasitic infestation. The insect destruction in the adjacent, untreated rows had progressed without interruption. In addition, countless numbers of dead nematodes lay underground, killed by some invisible force from the machine, in soil that had been their haven and breeding ground. The Journal of Paraphysics, number 3, 1969, reported the extermination of termites at a distance and without pesticides at the municipal works in Rosenheim, West Germany. The electrical system of a power plant in California experienced crippling breakdowns with no known cause, until a troubleshooter inserted detailed photographs of the installation into a mysterious box-like dowsing device. Within hours, all circuits and malfunctioning relays were back in normal operation. Similar experiments in California and Arizona resulted in successful treatment of more than 50,000 acres of diseased and infested trees. Sometimes the leaves or sap from a plant or tree are used as a resonant point of contact. A blood sample from a human patient, a lock of hair, or skin scraping have also been used to establish a link to the subject. A photograph is equally effective if the negative is not destroyed. Trailblazer in this technology is T. Galen Hieronymus, an amazing inventor whose creative history goes back many, many, many years from the time of the writing of this article, at least 60 years. Hieronymus began working on new methods of broadcast techniques during 1919 and 1920 when he was in the Army Signal Corps as a radio operator and electrical engineer with the Rainbow Division in France. He had his own ham radio license since 1913 and was with station KDKA, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he took part in the first radio broadcast. He was also trying to develop a wireless telephone in early World War I when he discovered some peculiar properties of certain metals and minerals. This led him to experiments with psionics, then called radionics, and the work of other early pioneers inspired him. I'll show you a picture here. This is a picture, and in the book, it's a diagram of the Hieronymus machine. And incredibly, it goes on in this article to elaborate, people have found that just the diagram in the hands of the right practitioner can produce provocative effects. This machine is also patented. I'll give you the patent number later on if you're interested in researching that. Can you see that? Cool, huh? Okay. When Ed Herman, an engineer at McGraw-Hill Incorporated Publishing Company in New York, requested that Hieronymus treat a caterpillar-infested tree on his lawn, He never expected anything as far out as long-distance extermination. Everything else had failed. For several years, and in spite of all the pesticides he and his neighbors used, every wild cherry tree in his northern New Jersey neighborhood was under the murderous attack of hordes of voracious tent caterpillars. Herman happened to be investigating psionics and was currently collecting information from Hieronymus. The Florida inventor was visiting Brigadier General Henry R. Gross's Homeotropic Research Foundation at the latter's farm near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Gross, then State Director of Selective Service, was working with psionic devices. To his neighbors' astonishment, Gross was invariably successful in exterminating insects from a good distance on more than 90 farms in the Cumberland Valley alone. "Send me a picture of your tree," Hieronymus wrote Herman. "Put some leaves and a few caterpillars in a box and mail them along. And don't forget to include the negative." This struck Herman as odd, but he complied with the request. 300 miles separated his home from the Gross farm. Yet a few days later, as he pulled into his driveway after work, he hit the brakes and stared in wide-eyed astonishment. Seemingly everywhere he looked, there was a carpet of many thousands of caterpillars. The furry horde lay in a full circle around the cherry tree and beneath the branches and leaves from which they'd fallen, struck dead by some mysterious force. "For your records," Herman wrote to Hieronymus later, "I think you should know that whatever you did to the cherry tree on our lawn was good. We don't have a caterpillar in sight. This isn't normal." Last year, we were still burning off caterpillars in late June and early July with flaming kerosene torches. Something definite and specific was done here. Everybody take note that the work that was done back in those days with the photographs, that for whatever reason it was important. People using these machines, they could use the photograph, but it was important that the negative be kept whole. It seems if the negative was destroyed, there was no, I guess you would call it contact or route of influence through the photograph. Let's see here. I'm almost done. Like I said, this is a really long article. I'm just reading the evidentiary points. Joseph Campbell, who was a gentleman who researched things like this and published articles, when he heard about the machine, he sent for the patent. He built his own device according to the specifications, tested it repeatedly, and induced everyone who visited his home in New Jersey to experiment with it. For a big, tough-minded, individualistic, often eccentric science baiter, he was absolutely fair and scrupulously honest when it came to facts. Here's what he wrote Hieronymus on June 4th, 1956. "If you can kill insect pests by working on a photograph and at a distance of thousands of miles, if I accept that, it implies that you can kill me with such a machine, despite all that I might do to hide, without my having any chance whatever of protecting myself, without my knowledge or opportunity to defend against the attack. The more you can prove that you can kill living entities at a huge distance without any understandable linkage that can be defended, the more you prove that I am helpless to protect myself. The more you make a man know that such forces exist, the less he can feel that he lives in a world of reasonable security, wherein he can at least have warning of attack and prepare to meet it." When I began working with the machine, I learned that it did not need a power supply. Then I learned that it wouldn't work if the tube was missing or defective. I saw some other machines and saw they worked despite the fact that their wiring system made absolutely no logical sense. The essence of that is, for whatever reason, and you'll find this going back if you study religions and ancient spiritual cultures, it's the shape and the combination of shapes, ultimately, that were in the machine that produce these effects. When Hieronymus filed the patent application for his psionic device in 1946, he was acutely aware of its potentialities. It could be used for great good or terrible evil. This, he explained later, was why he deliberately omitted some critical factors. Those were crucial times, he said. There was a realignment of political and military power after World War II, and I was afraid it might get into the wrong hands. Anyone with the right amount of money, back then it was $50 for the patent, some odd and ends from a workshop or basement, and several hours to spare can build his own or her own Hieronymus device. Or copy the full-page circuit diagram that I showed you with this article, paste it on some heavy cardboard, and give it the same crucial test advocated by John Campbell. There are other little points in the article where people mention using drops of people's blood if they were trying to do a healing. A lot of times it's the photograph. You sometimes wonder if maybe there's some folks out there who have these machines and are working with them. You know, lately we've seen a uptick once again in the popularity of what you would call the analog film cameras, the old style film cameras before digital. Seems like the digital is not the key here. It's the film cameras and possessing the negatives. To the astonishment of experimenters who sent, back then it was 50 cents, to the patent office in Washington and received schematic drawings and a description of patent number 2482773. That's 2,482,773. That's the patent number. The Hieronymus machine did seem capable of receiving and transmitting what was called elliptic energy. The problem was and is that the operator needed some practice to become skilled in the art. Moreover, some experimenters seem to have more natural talent and patience than others. You'll find stories of dowsers who use sticks to seek water. This is pretty much a documented thing and has been for centuries. Certain type of stick, certain type of wood, and some people seem to have more ability than others. So, and to be fair, you know, there are folks out there, they probably don't even need this machine to do whatever it is they do. I'm thinking that, in my experience, some of the folk I've met who possess what might be called extrasensory or above beyond abilities, fortunately, the ones I've known, they've all been into helping people and been into the healing arts. All right then. Well, I hope you found this interesting. I did. I have. It's, you know, again, my introduction to things like this, and always have been a natural skeptic. You got to prove it to me, and you know, this led me on quite an adventure. I've seen things, experienced things, which can't really be explained unless you believe there's something that's there that we all come from, and that can be used in ways that, if we're just aware of them, might be helpful. Well, I guess you could say the essence of this story and all the stories and articles in this book, and many of the stories from the mystical traditions and the writings of the world's religions and spiritual practices, is that there are things unseen, unheard, and unfelt by most human beings, uh, but whose influences are part of their lives and our lives, whether they feel them or not, use them or not. Um, and these things, whatever you may want to call them, essences, vibrations, chi, ki, prana, Holy Spirit, Shekhinah, the Force. Call them what you wish. It would appear that they're there and they're available to everybody. Uh, some folks, some people have easier routes to them than others, but they're there, and for many people, they're attainable. Um, sometimes just by being open to them, and they're just things, just like anything else. Not good, not bad. It's what you do with them. I would think maybe most of us are familiar with the Star Wars movies. I think there's a reason that, besides being really good entertainment, a lot of the themes in there touched a lot of people. The dynamics shown there between the practitioners of the Force and those of the dark side most likely contain answers to the questions of, what to do, what can be done with those kind of things. All right, well, thank you for letting me read to you. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.